All right, we're at 5 after, so I'm gonna get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Emily Fortuna. I am a senior developer advocate at R2C working on Semgrep. So I'm here to be your liaison between all your pressing questions and our excellent developers. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm a senior security researcher at R2C, and my job is to research security problems and write tools for them, among other things.
Yeah. Oh, and just for people who are interested, I'm based in Seattle. Where are you based in, Peter?
I live in Bruges in Belgium, so totally different time zone.
Yes, we're glad you could join us. And Jason, give us an introduction.
Hey guys, yeah, my name is Jason. I'm taking the place of Ty for this week, and who knows, maybe if I enjoy it, I might be taking his place more often. But yeah, I'm also a customer success engineer like Ty himself, and yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here. Pretty excited to learn and talk as well about Autofixes.
Awesome. Thank you all again for joining. I'm gonna pass it off to Peter, who's gonna share a screen, and we're gonna talk about writing awesome autofixes.
Yes, so I have a little something prepared to write some autofixes with you guys. Can you see my screen, and is it readable? Should it be bigger?
Folks can do a reaction, or you can message in the chat. Yes, no. Okay, Vicky says looks fine.
All right.
So, I would suggest making it just one click bigger, actually.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to assume most of you have written a rule before, and I'm here to teach you about fixes. I like using the advanced mode because that means I click less and I can type more and I keep my hands on the keyboard. But for the first example,
I will say, sorry, Peter, just in case you're wondering, you can write literally every rule in advanced or simple mode.
Yes,
they're both equivalent. They're just a matter of perspective.
Could start writing an autofix like this and then type here. And if we switch to advanced, we have the same stuff here. So the first example is very simple. We are going to look for calls to this make transaction function that I made up with a secure false, and we want them to be replaced with a secure flag set to true. So to write a Semgrep pattern, you can very easily go like this. And if we run this rule, make transaction secure is false. This is taking a long time.
Normally doesn't take this long.
This is not how it usually goes. Let's try again. Make transaction.
And yeah, in this case, we're using it just kind of like simple grep. There we go, much faster.
Yes, there we go. So I want to replace this with true, and you can do this by adding the fix key to your rule and then writing the replacement. In this case, it's very easy. You replace false with true. And if we run this rule, you can see on the right here that we have a fix, an autofix suggestion. And if we click apply fix, then this is replaced. So this is what autofix behavior does. I just used Command Z to undo this so we can write some more stuff.
And Peter, where do these autofixes appear for like in the developer's workflow?
So if you run Semgrep in your command line, there will be a preview as well. I can show an example maybe later.
Sure. No, I mean, verbally is fine.
And it's also possible to run in CI, and then Semgrep will create pull requests with these fixes.
Yeah, and even like if you do have with the inline comments on pull requests, there can be the suggested fix as well.
That's right. To go into a bit more advanced, say there is there's more variables in this call. So for example, we have an actual transaction. Just making up a class. This, and this call actually needs a transaction. So now we need to be able to replace this. And this can be any variable name. I just used t, but of course, this is not always going to be t. So what we want to do, this is what is called a meta variable in Semgrep. We want to create our rule to look for a transaction. And meta variable is always with a $sign and then in all caps. So transaction, for example. And then again,
and just like any other variable, a meta variable can just be any text you want. In this case, Peter named it transaction just to be sensical.
Yes. And so what is really nice about these is that you can reuse them in the fix. So if you write this and we run the rule again, we will see that we are now finding this transaction with t and secure false. And if we apply our fix, this t will stay in there. But sometimes the number of variables is actually dynamic. It is not always the same amount of variables. For example, there could be an optional parameter to commit or not, so that you can roll back later. So say we want to match this and we don't know for sure that it's going to be there. Well, for this, Semgrep has what we call ellipses. So we can match an unknown amount of code, lines of code, or it can be a number of variables in this case. If we do this, of course, we cannot reuse it in our fix. So this is why, and we have a cool feature, which is called a named ellipsis or ellipsis meta variables. We can actually name an ellipsis like this. This is unfortunately not supported in every language yet. This is very new. And we're still working on supporting this for various languages and for various constructs in each language. But for this example in Python, it should work.
Vicky has a question. Can we have multiple named ellipses in one fix?
Yes, I think that should not be a problem. We can try this out. Say there is another here, and we don't know how many there are. I'm missing a dot. This should not be a problem. There we go. And so we're replacing the false with true. And if I'm going to have to refresh maybe, because when you apply the fix, sometimes it doesn't come new up. Here we are, line 19. If we apply the fix, then secure is true. It doesn't work completely like we want, apparently. So maybe for fix, this isn't working yet. We have multiple named ellipses.
All right, well, regardless, thank you, Vicky, for exposing a bug for us. We'll work on fixing. Peter, what languages do the named ellipses work on currently? Do you know?
I think it's for Java and Python, and that might be it for now. Okay. I'm not sure if there's support for more languages. It's still very new, which is why I have a few more things to talk about. If you want to do things like this in another language, or if you run into bugs like we just saw, then we can use a combination of pattern insight and pattern. So usually you will use pattern insight to match things which are more control flowy. You will say, if I am running make transaction, but I didn't precede it by a secure transaction, for example. Then you can create a rule and you have a pattern, make transaction. And you can say, well, I only want to flag the make transaction when it is inside pattern, when it is pattern, in this case, not inside secure transaction. And like this. This is what we usually use pattern inside or pattern not inside for. This rule will flag this make transaction, but not this one because it is preceded by secure transaction. But actually a clever way to help with fixes is also to use pattern inside for your insecure code, and then use the pattern itself to find the exact piece of code you want to mark. And my current example already shows why this is sometimes problematic. It would work if you had a true here, but of course there can be multiple falses in this pattern. And so using pattern inside and pattern like this can be useful, but sometimes you still run into problems, which is why there is this latest feature which works for every language, which is called focus meta variable. And it works like this. So we're going back to our previous rule where we look for a transaction. And we want here to be, in this case, a meta variable. So it's a value. If we look at this, we will find each one that has any value for secure because it's a meta variable. What you can do then is meta variable. We're going to deeper into this meta variable. We say it should be looking for cases where it's false. Sorry. So right now we flag, we do the same thing as our previous rule, except if we want to fix this, we can now use what is called focus meta variable. And this one, as you will see, will mark one specific piece in your code. So where previously it was marking the entire line, actually now only this Boolean is marked. And if we use a fix now, we are only replacing that small piece of the code. So if I go to line 19 and apply a fix, you will see that it just replaced this one. So those are kind of the tricks you can have up your sleeve to write fixes.
Nice.
To go back to the example, the first one was meta variables, which is using this $sign to, in this case, we try to keep the T variable with what was a transaction. The second one was ellipsis meta variables to keep multiple arguments, of which we don't know how many there are. And then we can use pattern inside combined with pattern to focus on which part of the code we actually want to replace instead of replacing the entire line. And then finally, this can be done even easier with the new focus meta variable.
Peter, quick question.
Yes.
Parta is asking, is there a reason that on the, we should have numbered these lines, the pattern, you have the pattern, yeah, you have the false on a separate line there?
So this is just YAML syntax. This is how you write a string in YAML, and else it would have been recognized as a Boolean.
Good call. Oh, that's tricky.
This is, yeah, it's not that fun. YAML syntax has some weird quirks sometimes, but I still feel it's way easier to write rules in this than other formats that I've tried in the past.
Yeah. Does simple mode help with that at all, or is that not really? Trying to remember.
I think some things like
okay.
meta variable pattern are probably not supported here.
Okay, so we can't even explore that. All right,
Yes.
good to know. All right, sorry to make you erase your work. Oh,
Oh.
got it.
No problem. So yeah, that's most of the 95% of the rules do not use this feature and a few of the other advanced features. And we don't support these yet in simple mode because basically it's only R2C members who really use them. They can be kind of confusing to new people, but yeah, for writing fixes, they can be very useful.
Yeah, because it's good to be able to target that very specific pattern as opposed to the whole line. Cool. Should we open the floor to questions, or do you have more you want to talk about, Peter, first?
No, I think this is the demo that I had prepared to write fixes. I can talk about some other stuff, but maybe let's see if there are questions first.
Yeah. Anyone with questions, you may raise your hand, or you can type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. And I'll to be clear, your questions can be about literally anything, as these are office hours. So if you've got something you're working on that's confusing with Semgrep, we're
If
here.
you want me to write a rule for you.
Yes. It's called Stump Peter, which is the name of the half hour. We also can talk about other things if there's interest, but I wanted to open the floor first. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. We can start talking about a couple other things, but feel free to interrupt us at any point, and we can redirect and talk about something else based on whatever you have questions on. So, Peter, what else were you thinking of talking about?
So maybe something about these rules that I've been writing. So these are, of course, fake, and these are just examples. But what you've noticed is I am looking for a specific pattern in the code. And in this case, it's kind of arbitrary, but you know, if you're a security engineer, there are a lot of vulnerabilities that require taint analysis, where we will, instead of look for a certain pattern, we kind of want to see, can user inputs reach this certain thing? And then we decide whether it's vulnerable or not. So the simplest example in the top of my mind is a SQL injection. Typically, you can say, hey, does user input reach this SQL query? And if so, is it insecure? But with these rules that I've been writing so far, you're more looking at, is this query written in a way that it can ever be secure? And I think this is an important distinction to make. So Semgrep can write rules for both things. There we have very good taint analysis features. But yeah, part of my PhD research was trying to evaluate whether or not it would be good to make these more, we call them guardrail type rules. So instead of looking, can user input reach this SQL query right now, I actually prefer to write patterns and rules that just say, hey, the SQL query, if at some point user input reaches this one, it will be insecure. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. We've got a question
Yes.
from two people, actually, the same question. So there is, and this can also go to Jason if you know the answer as well, of course. There was a, so there's the fix regex pattern operator.
Yes.
And someone filed a bug a little bit back about meta variables not working with that. And the question was, is fixing that on the roadmap or not, as folks are wondering?
So for now, I think fix is not really something that's being worked on very heavily, but I know one of our PA developers, Matthew, is eager to work on it more. And I have actually done a lot of work behind the scenes to try and write fixes for many of our rules and to basically make a big scope document of all things that don't work yet. And maybe fixed regex and having meta variables in there will be one of the ways to resolve some of those problems. But I think we have better things in mind, well, better alternatives that maybe we don't need to write regexes to actually write the fix that we want.
So using things like focus meta variable and stuff, or what alternatives are you thinking about?
So this one definitely makes it easier to rewrite a certain part, but I would love, and well, this is a project for longer term, but I would love to have the fixes be more so right now they're basically a textual replacement in the Python wrapper of Semgrep, but maybe at some point we can have them be more syntax aware, and you can say, well, I want to replace this certain part of the code, and like now I have to try and match all of these variables around it, but technically you could just say replace the argument secure with the other one and don't touch the other arguments. And if you make them more syntax aware instead of just a string replacement, maybe there won't be a need for fixed regex. I haven't looked at the exact issue, so I cannot answer yet.
That's the gist of it, is just it doesn't work. But yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. If I think the power of Semgrep is that we're not just grep and we understand the language syntax and you can write rules accordingly. And if we continue down that route rather than just using regex, that's better.
So the most difficult thing about that is right now for every language we support, we have a parser. We parse that code. But if you want to rewrite with fixes, you also need a printer for every language that we need to support. So this is not a very light thing to add. It's going to be a ton of work to make this work.
Got it. All right. So further down the road, but cool. Well, we are at 10:30. I want to thank everyone for coming. It's great to have you. If you have more questions or you just want to chat with us, we are available on Slack, community Slack, which I believe I need to have this link saved. Or let me pull it up. But otherwise, yeah. We hope to see you again in future community meetups. I'll look up that link.
Nice seeing you all. Thank you for the questions.
All right. Okay. I guess everybody left. Didn't need to find the Slack. All right. Thank you, Peter. That was great.
Huge. Really,
yeah,
it took up a lot of the time. Yeah, I was like,
I learned.
Yeah, I didn't even need to be here. It's like you guys had it all covered.
Did you enjoy coming, Jason? Or
oh yeah, I mean, if anything, I was here to learn too, most of all. So it's really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about the named ellipses. That's cool.
I didn't know about focus meta variables. Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me.
It's a really nice feature for, first of all, not marking 70 lines of code. Yeah. And then second of all, for replacing that one specific thing in the code. Yeah, makes writing fixes much easier.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I gotta run, but thank you all again. I'll be more effusive in the Slack afterwards. But
all right.
You've been great, truly.
Okay. Have a good one.
Talk to you guys later.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.